Now let's open Visual Studio Code, navigate into use case number 2. If you click on use case number 2, you're going to see the same picto-learn directory sample, just like you saw here with use case 1. You're going to see the default.conf file, which is very similar to httpd.conf. You're going to find a readme, which is going to talk a little bit about what's being done here. And then you're going to have the Docker file, which is our Bible for creating the image. And you have scripts.txt, which is basically the set of instructions you're going to execute to see what's going on with this use case. So that said, let's look into the Docker file. So Docker file, we basically are looking at downloading Nginx 1.10. We could change it to whatever version we want. So let's fire up Docker Hub. I'm going to go to the hub.docker.com, search for Nginx. You find the official repository here. Now remember, the official repository is the repository we need to look into, not the other ones. If you see, this has got 10 million pulls and 5.6k stars. So let's take a look at the details. So the latest version looks like it's 1.11, but guess what? I'm going to try out 1.10. You can also make this latest. Instead of 1.10, you can just do latest, but I'm just going to stick with 1.10. The maintainer is picto-learn. The maintainer is nothing but the author. And then I have two files which I need to copy. I need to copy this file here, which has got the change in the root. So I move the root location to picto-learn. And then I have this picto-learn directory. So as you can see, I'm first copying the default.conf and then copying the picto-learn sample directory. So let's get started with the scripts now that you know how to build the Nginx image. So I'm just going to open up PowerShell, navigate to the directory. As you can see, I'm saying docker build -t my Nginx, which is the name of my image, and then the location to the Docker file is represented as a dot. It has started to pull the Nginx image from the Docker Hub. And as I said, we're using 1.10 and not the latest. So this is a good example to know that we could pull in any version of the image. So as it gets downloaded, the Docker image is going to be built, and it is built. So let's take a look at what's in the image. Let's go back to list all images. And as you can see, there are two images right now. One is called Nginx and the other one is called my Nginx. So my Nginx was the image downloaded from the Docker Hub. My Nginx was created on top of Nginx with a different image ID. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spawn two containers. So I'm just going to execute these commands. Again, all of this is done so that you can learn quickly, understand the concepts, and move on. So I'm going to run it with the name of my Nginx container. I'm going to run it in detached mode, as you can see. I'm going to give it a port name, which actually 777 is the name of the host port, which is going to map to port 80 of Nginx. So I'm going to run two containers like this. One on 7777 and 7778. We're going to see the containers. Let's see if we have any stopped containers as well. No stopped containers, as you can see. So let's go check it out on the browser. As you can see, it's running Nginx Docker image. And then I'm going to go to localhost 7778. And it's going to run this image. So that said, the next thing for us to do is to go into the log into the bash shell. So I'm just going to do the container ID, or I can do the name of the container as well, which is my Nginx container, but it's always safe to do the container ID. As you can see, I logged into the first container. Let me clear the screen. So let's look at the files we copied as a part of Docker file. We copied the default.conf to etc nginx conf.d. So I'm just going to cd into that. And then I'm going to look at default.conf. And as you can see, you see the change which we made, which is basically the one which you see here, which I'm highlighting right now. That said, let's take a look at where the picto-learn directory is copied. As you can see, pictolearn sample gets copied to pictolearn. So I'm just going to go into this directory here. So as you see, the pictolearn directory is available right here. So there we are. We have basically not just built an image, we basically constructed a container. We also executed the execute command and logged into the container. We could also check the logs as a part of this exercise. So I'm just going to do docker logs. Exit out of the container, docker ps-a, and then I'm going to say docker logs. As you can see, the logs are there. If I want to tail the logs, I can do -ft and then tail the logs. As easy as that. All right. So now let's go into the fun part of trying to building, shipping, and running images. As you can see, right now we have 2 images. So let's see how we can build, ship, and run these images. The next thing I'm going to show you is to go into DockerHub, go into hub.docker.com, and you may want to sign up here. As you can see, you can choose the Docker ID, put in your email, and choose a password. I already did that exercise, so I highly recommend going and creating yourself an account on DockerHub. You can click on sign in and then go and log in with your ID. In my case, my login ID is pictolearn. So what I'm going to do is create a repository. So creating a repository means that you're going to house all your images. So what's going to happen is once a developer creates an image, as it moves through QA, UAT, and production, everybody is going to run off the image. So let's take an example here. Let's say the DevOps team is going to basically create a repository for you, and let's call it Nginx repository for pictolearn. This is the Nginx repository for pictolearn. And then if you want to put in more details, you can put it in here. The visibility is public right now. If you choose a private repository, you actually have to pay. So I'm going to demonstrate this with a public repository. So right now, this particular repository has been created. So let's see how we can commit our image to this repository. As you can see, we have created a repository, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for my profile. As you can see, this is the username. So remember the username. Your email could be anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to PowerShell. I listed all the images. Let's say this is the image I want to ship. I've already built the image. As a part of shipping it to, let's say, a dev or QA or UAT or production, all I need to give the DevOps team is just this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first log into the Docker repository. So for that, you just need to do Docker login. And I already gave in a username. If you've not given a username, you could still continue to use this username. So I'm just going to log in to the repository. So it says login succeeded, which means I'm connected to the repository on the Docker Hub. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to create a tag of this image. So in order to create a tag, you're just going to go back to the scripts folder, and you can see this is the image. This is the command to create a tag. So the first thing to do would be to tag the image. So as far as repository name, I'm just going to name it as pictolearn, and then image name is Nginx, and then I'm going to say tag is 1.0, and then I'm going to go into the current image, which is basically my Nginx. So I'm just going to provide a name here, and then I'm also going to provide a tag here, which is latest. So in this case, this is the tag which I'm going to give. So what I'm going to do is basically I'm creating a tag. So once I do this, if I go into Docker images, as you can see, I've created a tag of this image. This image is a snapshot of this image which you see here. But as you can see, even the IDs are the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push this into the repository. So in order to push this into the repository, the easiest way to do that would be to copy this command. I'm just going to push it to repository number 1.0, and I'm just going to say Nginx pictolearn. and I'm going to push it. So as you can see, it's already pushed. So let's go into DockerHub, refresh this page, go into tags. As you can see, I just pushed this image. The size of the image was 72 MB, and then this was last updated a few seconds ago, and the tag name is 1.0. Now let's say, for example, I remove all the containers and the images. So for example, let's assume that developer is done with his task, and let's assume I take on the role of a QA. So what I would do on the QA machine is, so let's first remove all of the images here. So I'm just going to do docker ps-a. I'm just going to say docker stop. And then I can do consecutive IDs. It's going to stop both of them. Then I'm going to remove those IDs. And then I'm going to go back to the images. And then I'm just going to remove all the images which I see. So a quick command for that would be as follows. So it says it's got a conflict. So I'm just going to remove it one by one. Docker RMI :1.0 untagged. So if you look at this, the tagged image is removed. So I'm just going to try out that thing again. So as you can see, everything is deleted. Let me clear the screen. As you can see, let's assume starting right now that I am a QA engineer. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rely on the developer to give me an image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the repo info and just say docker pull pictolearn nginx :1.0. Okay. What it's going to do is it's going to pull my image. So let's see what happens. I'm going to pull the image and then fire up my containers to see if they launch up. As you can see, I was able to pull down my image, which was 182 MB. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say docker run -itd -name my nginx pulled image. I'm just going to go back here and then copy the port using the same port as the previous one. So I'm just going to say pictolearn -nginx :1.0. I was able to start a container. Let me do it for one more. 27778. As you can see, there are two containers running. So if I go back to 7777 and 7778, it should load up. So here we go. We were able to build, ship, and run software. Now going back to the summary, what we did as a part of this use case too was we created a Docker file. We built an image from the Docker file. We ran multiple containers. We tried logging into one of the containers to verify if it had all the files intact. Then we went ahead and created an account with DockerHub and then created a repository inside DockerHub. We tried to tag the image and then push the image into the repository. We removed the image from the local just to simulate what would happen if we have to build and ship software. Assuming that you've taken the role of a QA or a DevOps engineer, we try to pull the image and run the container again. So I know this is a lot of steps. I highly recommend going through this lecture a few times to get an understanding of what we've learned. So that said, thank you for watching this lecture, and I look forward to seeing you in the next lecture.